Hello, everyone. I'm Justin Prince, filling in for Don Papa today as part of the Saints Sports Report. Glad to have you with us on this February 16th, 2023. Let's expect to be a very busy week when it comes to sports for St. Clair. 4 different major sports teams get themselves situated for 4 major matchups. Volleyball in the focal point for 2 of their teams. The 2 others from basketball. What's the talking points here today for the Sports Report? Let's start things off amongst our discussions when it comes to women's volleyball, because they're coming off a very strong regular season. 14-4 was the record for St. Clair after the conclusion of their campaign away from the home building. And in turn, they're getting ready for the crossover games. Algonquin, their opponents, coming up. Let's bring in the head coach of their program, Jimmy Alturk, once again joining us here for the Saints Sports Report. Jimmy, strong regular season campaign. 2 more wins away from home to close out the regular season. How are you feeling entering this postseason?
Yeah, really excited, Justin, to be looking forward to the postseason and having a home court match this upcoming weekend. The seasons are really long, and the athletes have to invest so much every single day, not just as athletes, but as students, and they have to invest in each other. And for us to have, gone 14-4 in the win-loss record, but also have, done a bunch of community work with the South County Bandits this year, and all of everything else that kind of goes into the student athlete experience. I'm excited to say that we did, I thought, a really good job this year. I'm excited to close the door on the regular season and look ahead to Algonquin here in hopes of qualifying once again for the provincial championships.
Yes, indeed. It's going to be a very busy time coming up. Let's talk about the previous matchups away from home. Humber and Sheridan amongst those opponents around the GTA area. How would you describe the matchups in themselves? Starting off with the Humber matchup to start off the final games of the matchups of the season.
I think we played our best volleyball of the season in the first 2 sets against them. We lost the first set 25-22. It was 22-all in the first. And then they took the next 3 points. And then in the second set, I thought we played probably the very best volleyball of the year, especially in that set, and won that set 25-22. Mm-hmm. But we just weren't able to sustain in the third and fourth set. Humber is a very talented team with very balanced offense and a lot of service pressure. And I thought their service pressure kind of got to our reception a little bit and just made it really hard on our offense to score. We need our middles to be involved in our offense for it to be as efficient as possible. And we just didn't really have that in the third and fourth set. But we kind of walked away having been proud of some parts of our performance for sure, and have learned about, what we might have to do if we see that kind of team again in terms of sustaining. The next day against Sheridan, I thought we were up and down at times. We were sometimes our own worst enemy, and other times we played really, really great. We ended up winning the match 3-1, and the 3 sets that we won, we were very much in control. So it was really nice to play at Sheridan, which is the host of the provincial championship, in the last game of the season. It kind of gave us a pretty close look at what that gym might look like if we're successful in qualifying this upcoming weekend. So overall, really happy with the weekend. Certainly would have loved 2-0, but we're playing good volleyball, and that's about all I can ask for at this time of the year.
I was going to say, when it comes to the Humber matchup, of course, they came in at the losing streak, but leading the way in the division, now entering the postseason. Going to be one of the major teams to keep an eye on. But also, you mentioned the crossover. Algonquin, that opponent. They've been the best blocking team per set in the province, in fact. 2.31 set blocks per set, 148 solo blocks led by Maddie Nadu and Christina Renwick. How do you try to adjust in turn for that blocking scheme like they've had in the East this season?
Yeah, it's difficult to say, Justin, because I think sometimes the stats in the video don't always align. Like if I look at their roster, I wouldn't, and I watch their match, but I also just look at their physicality. Like A lot of athletes on their team who are 5'5", 5'6", 5'7", 5'8". They don't necessarily profile as a really good blocking team that way. But the stats are the stats, right? So they're obviously doing something at the net, and I think from what I've seen, it's maybe more that they're aligning their block in good spaces versus, getting their hands really far over the net and putting pressure on our attackers that way. So I think if we hit responsible shots, not trying to hit the ball really low to the net, trying to hit the ball deep in the court and sharp cross court, I think we can neutralize some of their block. But I think the thing that I was most impressed with when watching them was their ability to pass the ball. I think they're profiling as a really good receiving team, which will be, I think a good test for our serving. At times our serving's been really good. At times it's been inconsistent. And this past weekend we served really well. So if we can carry that forward, I think that might be an element that may sway parts of the match is our service pressure against their quality reception.
I was going to ask what were the things worked upon. You touched upon one of them. What else has been a major emphasis in practice for this playoff matchup this weekend at home?
Block and defense. Our block and defense got shredded by Humber this past weekend, and in part it's because their offense is very good, like I mentioned earlier. But I thought we didn't really help ourselves with really good blocking alignment against their attackers, and we didn't have really good synergy between our blocking and our defense. So that was a very big emphasis yesterday in the video session and on court, and will be again today. And if we can make some adjustments and some strides on block and defense, I think that will absolutely help our chances on Saturday.
One thing to touch upon, too, coming over from the regular season campaign, two major contributors throughout the season, Kiana Huggins, Chantal DeVlute, when it comes to a lot of the scoring, combined amongst them nearly about 190 kills from them this campaign. That's been an important connection amongst them on both sides of the net this season, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, the game's in lost with your outside hitters. And we're lucky to have two very talented outside hitters and a setter and Emma Clements that's able to deliver the ball where the hitters like. And so, when we're not passing well, we've got those two to kind of rely on to get us out of trouble and hit us back into some matches because it's difficult to rely on your passing. So I think we're very fortunate to have both Huggy and Chantal as problem solvers for our offense, and they're able to get us out of some sticky situations and also convert some points when we make some digs. It's nice to have some pin hitters that you can set and really trust that they're going to be able to put the ball away. And they both played very, very well this past weekend against two opponents that I thought blocked very well. They both hit really efficient. So it's nice that they're also playing good volleyball, heading into the playoffs.
Indeed, to touch upon Algonquin a little bit one more time in that regard, what else should we keep an eye on when it comes to Algonquin when they come to the building on Saturday for the afternoon tilt? What else should fans keep in mind outside just the blocking?
Yeah, they're a good defensive team. They're scrappy. The teams up in Ottawa are always, keeping the ball alive and making you have to earn all of your points. And they don't make many errors. They don't serve out a ton and they don't spike out a ton. And so it can be a trap sometimes when you play against teams like that because you get impatient and you feel like you need to win the rally with every serve or with every attack. And so we have to manage our side a little bit and make sure that we're not getting impatient and making silly attacking errors. I think as the rally progresses, that might be to our benefit. So we have to be really comfortable getting the game more in the transition phase of the game and knowing that we can dig ourselves back into advantageous situations where we can set our middle. That's been our bread and butter in a lot of ways in transition is being able to set our middle attackers, especially Geneva Heisman. So if we can find a way to get G involved in transition, then I think that will bode very well for us.
Well, on that note, I'd like to thank you once again for the time, Jimmy. Once you get back to the preparation, good luck this weekend.
Appreciate it, Justin. Thanks, and we'll see you on Saturday, man.
See you on Saturday. That's Jimmy Alturk, the head coach of the women's volleyball squad for the St. Clair Saints. And as mentioned, this upcoming weekend is that playoff matchup. You catch it here on WeDigital.ca, where St. Clair looks to pack the Plex for the crossover game. Algonquin, St. Clair on We Digital. Be sure to tune in from the Rose City. Also coming up throughout that weekend, on that day away from St. Clair's main building, the men's volleyball squad looks to gear itself up for playoff action. The men's team finished off the season 8-10 after losing their final two matchups against Humber and Sheridan. In turn, they look to try and see what they can do against one of the top teams from the East this season, Canadore. Sean Rayam now joins us, the head coach of the men's program. Sean, first of all, 2 losses to close out the campaign over the weekend. How would you describe the men's matchups compared to what was talked about for the women's side from Jimmy Alturk?
Hey, Justin. For us, Humber was a similar type of game as on the women's side. They're playing on their senior night. They had 3 graduating seniors who were like 4th or 5th year, like all-stars, and they played unreal. And I'm proud of our boys for sticking with them and like playing with some heart and keeping the sets, first and third set, relatively close. But honestly, if Humber plays like that throughout the playoffs, nobody's going to touch them.
Yeah, Humber's a very difficult team, as we've seen throughout the campaign when it comes to being able to score, to say the very least, offensively. Sheridan as well closed out the campaign. How would you describe the Bruins side of the card away from home to close out the season?
That match did not affect the standings whatsoever. So they rolled out their seniors again on a senior night, and they played great. Like, kudos to them. They were really, really solid across the board. And I used the opportunity to get a little bit of experience in for some of my rookies and some of my bench players to see what kind of production I could look forward to for this coming weekend.
Was about to say, during St. Clair's senior night, just the week prior, some of the young players got chances against Boreal at the Vipre. Who really stood out to you amongst those players that got that chance in turn against Sheridan?
Jake Arsenault-Dufour had a pretty solid game. It was interesting to watch him go from, like, he had a good game with Boreal, and then he goes up against this significantly stronger team and get a little bit turned around a little bit, because they run a fast offense and something he hadn't seen before, and then to bounce back after like having a little bit of mental struggle with it and play well to finish out the game. That was really nice to see. Jaden Knuckles had a good game as well. He was good passing defensively and spiked pretty well. And then I got pretty much what I expected for most of the rest of the seniors, because like they've had chances here and there as well. And honestly, they play well in practice too. So it's not like anything was crazy. There's no huge revelations on that game. I'll say that.
Okay. Got you on that one. But throughout the campaign, 2 players really stood out if you look towards stats on top of the major contributions from across the board, you can argue. There was Wilkinson with 170 kills and also active on digs, but Harnedek, one of the top liberos in the province this season. How would you describe Harnedek's performance? Big step up in his senior campaign.
Yeah, he is the backbone of our defense and the backbone of our passing lineup, honestly. Like, he does such a good job quietly keeping us into games that you may not even be noticing, that he's just racking up the digs, taking any ball he can in serve receive, giving our hitters the opportunities to just go and spike. So like, he is a huge, huge part of our game right now, to the point where we were, honestly, our blocking scheme was, let's make them hit the ball at Blake for a little while in the season. So like, it's going to be a tough one to lose because he's graduating after this season.
Indeed, 176 digs from Harnedek in the regular season alone from him. And to turn back towards Wilkinson, been picking up a lot of more offense in the closing stages we've seen before the final road trip as well. How do you try and, or rather, how are you planning to accentuate that offense in turn against Canadore?
We're gonna set him the ball. Like he struggled early to kind of make the jump from club and high school up to the OCAA level, but once we figured some things out, like you can see he's hitting some ridiculous numbers that you don't usually see out of a rookie. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, he's a very solid passer, which makes his job more difficult. And like we've been leaning on him, and we're going to continue to lean on him. It's not like we still want to spread the offense, because I think we've been pretty good at that for the most part, is keeping everyone involved offensively. And it takes some of the pressure off of him, but he has made it very clear in the last, at least like most of this second semester, that if we need a point, it's probably going to go to Cal.
And in turn, Canadore turning towards them fully 8 straight matchups in the win column. The number 1 team in kills per set, the number 1 team in assists per set, and 4 players with 149 or more kills. To say the very least, very challenging matchup against the 15-3 Canadore Panthers coming up.
Yeah, they are pretty solid across the board. I've been watching their matches pretty much nonstop all week, looking for patterns, looking for what are we going to take advantage of, where can we expect them to take advantage of us. And honestly, like across the board, they're pretty good at most of what they do. I think we can get at them in a few spots, but like at the end of the day, they're a 15-3 team. They're obviously very good at winning, so it's going to take more than the physical aspect. There's going to be a huge mental hurdle to overcome going into, first of all, traveling up to North Bay, playing in this gym we've never ever seen. It's going to be a madhouse, I imagine, because the Canadore women's team also has a match before ours. So I'm sure we'll see a huge crowd. And so we're going to have to compete with all of that on top of a team that doesn't really know how to lose. So it's going to be a challenge for sure.
You mentioned the mental aspect in terms of something to focus on a lot. How has it been in turn for practice, in terms of emphasis for that mental focus?
Last night we did our best to get under the skin of our athletes in practice, noisemakers, like shouting things at them, just trying to get them, like, if you don't ever practice getting distracted and chirped in practice, then you walk into a hostile environment, like it could get to you. So that was a big focus last night. It's going to be a focus again tonight, is how are we going to handle all of the ruckus that we can be expecting. And I think the boys did well last night, and I imagine they're going to be even better tonight, because now they have an idea of what to expect, at least from us, which I tried to make it so that we could be a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more personal than they would actually encounter in a different gym against a team we've never played. So I don't think they'll get to our guys any worse than we already have, but who knows?
Who knows indeed what can happen. After all, it's playoffs. But one thing I do want to ask too, on top of the noisemakers amongst that, what were some of the things also touched upon a lot in the midst of all the noisemakers going off in turn for the practice, in terms of the game in of itself?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The question was, outside of the mental focus, what else was something you worked on in practice?
Oh, okay. We're really focusing on our block defense as well, much like Jimmy. They have a slightly different style of play than we've come against very much in the West, where their tempo is not super fast to the pins, but they have outside hitters who can really put the ball away. So it's going to be about how do we adjust our block to a different speed of set, a different height of set, a different location. Also, he tends to, I won't give it away, but he tends to do some things that we can take advantage of. But we have to be very, very conscious of what we're doing when we're blocking. And the defense around that is going to be critical, because I think they're good enough of hitters that if we block them a couple times early, they're going to realize, like, oh, they've got this shot stopped now. I should do something else. And so we have to be prepared for that something else as well.
On that note, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to speak about this weekend's playoff action for yourself. Good luck once again up in North Bay.
Thank you very much.
Once again, that's Coach Riem for the men's volleyball squad, again taking on Kenador at 6 p.m. this February the 18th. Be sure to keep an eye on how the men's team plays out against one of the top teams from the East Division in the 2022-23 OCAA volleyball season. In that note, it's time to turn things over towards the hardwood. It's time to turn towards, well, what's in the backdrop there? Basketball is up on the docket next, and plenty of basketball hoops coming up with high expectations for respective squads. The high expectations include huge matchups for both the women's and men's teams against the Mohawk Mountaineers as well as the Niagara Knights. Joining us now to start things off for the basketball side of the discussion for men's basketball is today Coach Matt Sykes, as Coach Sykes in his 13-3 squad now join us here. Well, first things first, two big games coming up. Lots to talk about after two huge matchups against your respective opponents, Humber and Redeemer. Thank you so much for the time. First of all, how are you feeling 13-3 in the mix for one of the top seeds for the postseason?
I mean, anytime you can be in history and be in something that you're trying to push for, that our team is striving for something that hasn't happened in multiple years, in first place in our conference. I mean, me and Coach Segan can't be happier with our team.
Indeed. Let's talk things over about how the matchups previous in the past week went to close out the home campaign here. First, let's talk about Redeemer. An interesting matchup, to say the very least. Lots of back and forth in that matchup in turn. How would you describe the Royals and what you've seen with one of the more respected coaches too at the helm for that side as well?
Yeah, I mean, they're better than the record shows. They were definitely not a 4-win team when they did it, and they just beat Mohawk last night, which kind of proved how tough our conference is. They were playing desperate basketball and trying to get into the playoffs. So we knew that it was going to be a playoff atmosphere type game. And I mean, they gave us pretty much all we could handle leading up to the fourth quarter. It was a very good showing for our guys in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, it was talked about, actually discussed this with you prior to the start of that game as well, how in that regard for that respective game, it was in consideration for a playoff game. And then they talked about the tiebreaker with Fanshawe that really factored into how difficult that fight had to be able to come away with the win for your side.
Yeah, I mean, they made the Final Four last year. They've been multiple games just away from winning a bronze medal, gold medal games. They're a great program, and I mean, a coach that has a lot more experience than Coach Segan and myself, and in the last few years, and I mean, we knew they were going to come with everything they got. They always play us tough. I do believe that he's one of the best coaches in the CCAA. So I just knew what they were going to bring, and we kind of prepared ourselves for that. And I mean, our guys answered the bell.
Well, the next day, the bell rang again for another matchup for senior day. Huge night with multiple core seniors graduating from that huge recruiting class just a few years ago. How would you describe the emotions of that senior night?
Yeah, I mean, it's sad to know that a few of those guys are going to be leaving, and something that a lot of those guys built our program with. Going into Humber, it's a team that they've never beaten, and Coach Siegs or myself have never beaten since we've been co-head coaches. So it was something that's been marked on our calendar since the last loss at Humber happened, and our guys, once again, like you said, they answered the bell and they stepped up when it mattered.
Yeah, indeed. And it seemed like a game where the offense flowed your way. But I will say this, first-year player who is from the region high school-wise, Kyle Brown-Fazekas, went off. How difficult was it defensively to try and stop his production inside and outside throughout the night?
Yeah, I mean, we prepared for a couple other players too, and he was one of them, and we shut down the ones that we definitely needed to. In their fifth-year guard was one of them, their point guard Lambert Cador. Brown Fazekas had a star next to his name that we needed to do a good job on, and I mean, he hit some tough shots. I mean, nothing was overly easy for him. He had a couple in the lane jumpers and hit a couple threes, but he's a good basketball player, and it's always good to see a local talent somewhere else doing good as well. It doesn't always have to be with our program. Sometimes it's better for guys to get away. So I'm glad it's working out for him, and I really like him. He's a good kid, and I wish him all the best.
In the regard to your respective squad as well, some of the graduating steers stepped up throughout that entire weekend and have been for much of the campaign. One that comes to mind immediately, Jalen Harmon. Several ferocious dunks and harmonizers, as he liked the pun of, in terms of some of the dunks he put up. For example, he has been a huge part of this offense this season, it seems, in terms of flow. How would you describe Jalen Harmon's piece in it?
I mean, we can't describe Jalen enough about what he's done for our program and the type of person he is, not even his basketball side of things, the character he is and the type of leader he is and how much respect he's garnered in this community. He's been so good for our program. He was huge in the Redeemer game. And of course, no matter what he does, if it's scoring, defense, drawing charges, just his overall positive personality, he helps our team immensely more than anyone could ever imagine. I mean, he helps us as coaches. He helps our department. He's the epitome of a college basketball player, and he's as close as professional as what we'll ever see here.
I was going to say, when it comes to that, throughout the past couple seasons especially, whenever there's a sporting event on campus, it's not a surprise to see Jalen Harmon there immediately say hi to everybody, immediately get himself situated and cheer on St. Clair Saint sports across the department.
Exactly.
And the major point you emphasize, Mohawk, a major game, that game you mentioned with the Redeemer matchups with them has made it huge. 14-3 for the Mountaineers entering the weekend, 13-3 for your side's record. Huge implications. If you win, strong chance to take the number one seed in the West.
Yeah, if we gotta win both this weekend. We kind of control our own destiny now, which is a good thing. We go and win both, and we get first place. We're not gonna hold back. If we beat Mohawk, we're not gonna hold back against Niagara and rest people or anything. We got 2 weeks off after that. Like I said earlier in the show, we want to win the conference. That's the goal right now. That's the first step is beating Mohawk Saturday, and step 2 would be beating Niagara on Sunday.
And in respect to that matchup as well, who are some of the players you're keeping an eye on the most when it comes to the Mountaineers, especially with how they have played throughout the season and how respectively their campaign's gone, especially with Jerry Mercury Jr.?
Yeah, I mean, Graham and Kalura are the 2 guys we're going to be our matchups are looking for. They're the 2 that beat us when they were here. They both had huge games against us and will be respective all-stars in this league. Jerry, one of our former players, is also going to be a former all-star on our team, and our guys kind of have that one marked on their calendar when they beat us here. And it's another one of those, every time somebody's beat us, we've answered the bell. So we gotta handle business, and we're going to come up with a game plan that we've been practicing all week and kind of see if we can execute it.
And the big thing is, too, Niagara is also a solid program at 10-6 on their campaign this season. They're also in the fight for the 3rd seed in the West Division, which adds that extra tension, so to speak, while, by the way, winning every game in the month of February so far.
Yeah, they're on a good winning streak, and they're playing good basketball. They play a good brand of basketball. They play defense and they play physical, and they got a good rookie coming off the bench that's provided a huge spark for them this season, and a couple veteran players who can hit shots when they need them. And they've been winning a lot of close games, not a lot of blowouts. So it's a testament to the once again, it's a testament to the kind of basketball that we're playing here in our conference.
Yeah, just the last game for one of those stars you're mentioning, DeRoy Grandison, for example, this season, 16 points per game, but coming off a 27-point performance in the most recent game against Fanshawe. someone that in turn is very efficient from the field. How do you keep Grandison out of the conversation game-wise, like you did with some of the Humber stars last time out?
Yeah, I mean, that's why we got Jalen. So that's going to be his guard. That'll be say Jalen, go get him and shut him down. That's kind of what we've been doing. We have him. We got Terrence. We got Darnell. We send them out and say, hey, go shut down the star player. And I mean, especially the second semester, we task one of them to do something, and they've been doing it. So it'll be key for us for win the defensive matchup.
And in turn, keep in mind, you also have the provincial championships afterwards, too, to consider there. You mentioned the 2-week break there, a huge opportunity this season where it's been talked about so many times. It's been decades since a gold medal's come home for basketball, in men's basketball for St. Clair. It's pretty simple, the question, how difficult in turn is it to feel with that pressure from knowing how long ago it's been?
Yeah, I mean, it's okay. I mean, me and Coach Segan, it helped last year getting to the national championship and kind of getting those first-year jitters going and out of the way of making a conference final and making the national championship. At the end of the day, it's basketball, and there's going to be a winner and a loser, and you can't take it home with you too much or else it's going to eat away at you. You just got to go and make sure the guys are enjoying their time while they're playing here and making sure that we put on a show for the people that are going to be here. And we want to make this a tournament to remember.
Indeed. And what are some of those aspects in turn that you have had to work on? I know you're a huge part, in fact, in a lot of the, not just basketball, but a variety of sports as yourself as well.
Yeah, it's fun. We're a great host. I mean, not to be biased, but I think we do a really good job hosting here. We host a lot, as you know. Men's basketball is actually pretty much the last thing that we haven't hosted in the last like 6 to 7 years. So, I mean, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be a good way to go out for this year, to be one of the last events that we'd be hosting when it changes to a Final Four format. I think it's good for the league that we're hosting. I think people will enjoy being in Windsor and the college, and I think we'll put on a good spectacle.
And on that note, anything else you'd like to mention that fans should keep an eye on, or rather, what you've been working on in turn for these upcoming games to close up the campaign to try and execute to get the 1 seed?
Yeah, I mean, we got to stick to our game, push the pace. We do a really good job pushing the pace and make other teams keep up with us. Mohawk averages 90-plus points. We average 99 points, so we might be a little lower now, but we're in the 90s, and we got to do a good job of being able to stop them in transition and us to score. And, I mean, it's easier said than done, but it's going to be almost 2 different brands of basketball with Mohawk and Niagara, so we just got to play our game and hope it falls our way.
Well, on that note, we'd like to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us once again. Let you get back to the preparation. Good luck to close out the regular season on your side.
Thanks, Justin. Appreciate it.
That's Coach Sykes joining us from the men's basketball program for St. Clair. Once again, they'll be looking to close out their campaign against 2 opponents, the Mohawk Mountaineers and then the Niagara Knights on back-to-back days. They take the Mountaineers on Saturday and the Knights on Sunday. Be sure to keep an eye on social media to see how St. Clair closes out the regular season before the focus then turns towards the championship tourney that starts off at the start of March, where you can catch all that coverage here on We Did It All from March 3rd all the way up to March the 5th. One more note want to mention when it comes to the sports in basketball side of things. Women's basketball also entering big games for their respective matchups, 7-7 for their respective campaign. They'll be also in huge tilts after they beat Redeemer, then lost to Humber to close out their regular season campaigns. Keep in mind, huge emphasis on how things play out for the seeding for that matchup. You can also follow along with St. Clair College is Saints Sports social medias to keep an eye on those score lines. But on that note, well, thank you so much for watching along with this week's edition of the Saints Sports Report. I'm Justin Prince. For my producer today, Evan White, it's time to say so long. We'll see you next time out. We'll see you next week for the Saints Sports Report.